Can you introduce yourself and then tell us what your role is in the library?
Okay. I am Sherry Kelley, and I work with regional campus students and in instructional services. That's what I do now. And I've worked here for a pretty good long while. I don't know if you're going to ask that later, but yeah, that's who I am.
So you was a student here first before you started working
I
here.
was.
What was it
Yeah.
like?
It was very different than now. I started as a student, my first year as work study as a freshman, I worked in the English department. And then the next year, I got a job in the library. And I honestly don't know why that happened. I think maybe they had too many in the English department, so I ended up here in the library working for Ellen Williams in the LRC. And basically, except for one summer, I was there for 4 years. And it was a lot of fun. It really was. There were a lot of work stays at the time, and there were more staff at that time, and it was kind of like a family. There were, in LRC at that time, we were just starting to get like computers where students could use them, and mostly they typed their papers, to turn in down there, although we still had typewriters on 4th floor. And so a lot of students used the typewriters instead of the computers, and the Apple computers were really large, and I kind of helped. I was one of the several students that helped with with the technology, but I did a lot of shelving back then, and we had actual records. And I had several supervisors, but it was fun. I really loved it, and that's from that experience, that's why I decided to try to get a job as staff here in the library, because of being work study down there.
Did you immediately go and work with the university after you graduated?
I graduated in May of '91, and then I applied and was interviewed all summer. Sometimes Morehead State takes its time to hire people, but I was interviewed. We had 4 positions open that summer, and the last one that I interviewed for, I got. But it took some time, and so I didn't get hired until October. But looking back, during the time it felt like an eternity. But looking back, it really wasn't that long. But I volunteered during this summer that I was interviewing, because I had no reference desk experience. So I volunteered every day, Monday through Friday, and it was like all day, like 7.5 hours a day, just so I would get that reference desk experience. And then I got a job in periodicals as staff in October.
So can you talk about a little bit what you do now?
Sure. I work with instructional services now, mostly. That's what I do. Mostly I talk to classes that come in, like FYS classes or English 200 classes, English 100 classes, communication classes. So a lot of times it's freshmen, and I talk to those students about how to do library research and try to guide them towards using our library resources instead of just Google.
So, how different is it now from when you were a student to working then and to now working?
We have a lot less people working here. At one time, there were maybe, I remember getting 44 Christmas cards. All of us used to send Christmas cards. Well, most of us anyway. I wasn't always the best. But everyone in the library would put a Christmas card in the mailbox. And so one year I had 44, and that was kind of typical. Now We have a lot less people. So a lot of it's because a lot of things are digitized, and we're more in a lot of things are online, and students do not use the books near as much as they used to. I think over the years that's progressively, students do use books for certain, but not like they did then. And they don't have to come to the library quite as much because they can get their things online now more than, just coming in physically. So.
Was the library part of your academic education back then?
How so? Oh.
Like, how did the library play a role when you were a student?
Oh, well, yes. We had to use the library often. Even if I wasn't working here, I was in here a lot. I was an English major, so I had to come in here and pull books, to write these papers. I was on third floor a lot back in those days. And then I used the articles and periodicals. We had a whole periodicals department, and I was in here often, and we had a lot more students in here then, and I used the library a lot. It played a big factor. I wouldn't have been able to do very well without the resources here.
How do you think it's changed from when you were a student to for students now for the library?
Well, as I remember, back then, we didn't have study rooms. So, or at least if we had them, I certainly didn't use them. And I don't know of a whole lot of students that did use them. Over the years, that's become a big thing for students to use study rooms, to come in, 3 or 4 people, and they'll reserve a study room. And so we didn't really have that. Over the years, I think interlibrary loan has become more a factor. I didn't use interlibrary loan until after I graduated. And I probably would have used it more if it would have been more advertised. I think that is one thing. We try to bring people in now more somewhat through social media. Back then, like students, they just came anyway because they knew they had to use the library. The faculty members also, I think, sort of pushed it maybe more than now. I do know some faculty members, encourage students to go to the library, but it was kind of our lifeblood. We had to, if we're going to get a good grade, we had to come in the library. We had vending room back then. We do not have a vending room now, and that was kind of a gathering place for students and for staff. We were very religious about our breaks. After I became staff, we had a 9:30 break, a 2:30 break, and lunch break. And staff, usually that's when they took their breaks. Not so much now. I mean, we definitely take breaks, but we don't say, at 9:30 every day religiously. Nah, we don't do that now. But for students, I think back then too, students wanted to come, and maybe even more, just to hang out than now. Although I think students do come here to hang out, but there just aren't as many. When I walk through the library, there's students, but there's lots of empty chairs and but there were many times down through the years that it would be hard to find a place to sit. Especially during finals week, a lot of times in our areas. And I'm thinking back to Commons area just a few short years ago, where academic advising is now. Often there that was a very popular spot for students, and there weren't any places sometimes for students to get a computer because they were all taken. And that's another thing. Our library back then, the whole library was all ours, and now there's parts of the physical building that actually no longer. It is the library, but it's parceled out to other departments, which can be good and can be bad. We've lost some space or some real estate, but.
How do you think technology has changed over the years in the library?
Oh, wow. I'll tell you a little story. We were just starting to get internet. It was monitored. I remember one time when I was a student in LRC, and I and some other fellow Worksday students were looking at a screen. I don't even remember what we were looking at. At that time it was timed, like you could only be on the internet for 10 or 15 minutes. And everyone only got 10 or 15 minutes to be on the internet, because that's not where it was. It was actually in the shelves. I mean, the information was in books in the shelves, and so, or in, we would look at indices. And my supervisor came up and, "You've been on this too long," and they were very concerned, what are people looking at on the internet? As that progressed down maybe 15, 20 years later, down to today, no one monitors anything in the library that people are looking at. But we had microfilm and microfiche machines. We still have them, but they were used all the time. People would be in a line for them. There's no lines for microfiche or microfilm machines now. And then we have 162 databases now. I remember when we had like our first databases, and they were just like a project and just a temporary time. We would have sociological abstracts, for example, and we had that. It was kind of like a trial, and that's when we were first getting databases. And I remember the first online magazine, Mother Earth News. That was one of the first ones. We had like 2 online magazines, and it was a big thing. Students didn't use it a lot at that time when it first, when anything first comes out. But then the databases obviously grew. We have a lot more than 2 now, and we have them for more than 6 months. So yeah, that's changed. We have a maker space now where students can create things. We didn't have any of that then. We've evolved a lot down through the years with technology.
What do you see the future of the library looking like?
For me, in the next few years, I won't be working here in this library, but I think that it's going to continue to go more digital. I certainly hope that actual physical books don't disappear from the library. I think there will be some, but the space they take will be less and less, and I think there will maybe be less staff and faculty as things get more and more, everything's online anyway, but I think AI will play a big role in reduction of actual people. I think there's going to be less relationships like among workers. We've always kind of felt like a family here. Not so much now, but I think that will continue to diminish, unfortunately.
Now for the really fun part. Do you have any memorable memories of just or just like experiences from your time here?
Oh, Lord. I have a lot of them, so I can't say all of them.
Say as
But
many as you
I'm,
want.
I'm going to say some of really good memories that I had when I was a student worker. I worked with Helen and Deanna and Neil and Kathy and Tamala. And we had food often. Back to, we sort of felt like a family. During Christmas breaks, often I would work like, several hours in a week, almost as much as regular staff. And during summer breaks, I would do that too. And I remember one time we were in a book moving project. We had the LRC collection on 5th floor, and it was going to 1st floor. And several of us students were packing books, on carts and moving them down. And Deanna and some of the other staff in LRC had made a big dinner. They had hot dogs often, and they would have it in the vending room in the library. We didn't have students in here during Christmas break and during summer breaks. So Deanna had gotten herself a bell. And she rung that bell and she hollered out, "It's time to come and eat." So we all went to the vending room when we heard the bell, and that happened often. We used to have a lot of parties here. Like, people would bring in food, a lot of potluck. We've had, I won't even name names, but we've had a lot of interesting characters in here. We've had some fights, and I'm not going to go into detail. We've had a lot of interesting things happen here. I've really gotten really close. Some of my very best friends have come from here over the years of folks I've worked with. One of the women that I work with now, she and I go way back. She started as a student work study in periodicals, and I was staff, and then she left for a while and she came back, and then she started working in interlibrary loan, and we both got married, and she was in my wedding and I was in her wedding. We were co-workers together. So yeah, and then I had another really close friend that she taught me to crochet, and when she said, "We're going to teach you to crochet," nah, I didn't think, "You're never going to be able to teach me to crochet," but I fell in love with it, and for a few years, that's all I wanted to do. In the last few years, I haven't done that quite so much, but she doesn't work here anymore either. Not in this library. She works at UK Library, but we became, I would say, lifelong friends. Stephanie Bush is her name. But yeah, the folks I've worked with really has made it more than actually what we do. It's always good, and for the most part, even though we've had some very interesting characters, for the most part, I've really enjoyed working with the people here. They all, everybody's got different personalities, and for me, I'm a people person. We have a lot of people here that are animal people, but not me. I love people.
So I was going through the pictures, and I actually found a photo of you doing one Halloween costume parties that you guys had. What was kind of like what it felt like back then, where you have all the staff at the events?
Yeah, we had Halloween parties. I never really dressed up. Maybe once or twice I dressed up. We had lots of Halloween parties. We would have spring flings. We would have Christmas parties. We had so many parties that one time, and this was early 2000s, we had a rather new librarian come, and he was my supervisor, and he was a lot of fun. And he hadn't worked here maybe a couple of months, and it was a change of the season from summer to fall, and he knew we had a lot of parties. Like every week it seemed like we were bringing food in, having some kind of potluck. So I told him, I went to his office, and it was I want to say it was October. And of course I felt a little mischievous. We didn't actually do this, but I told him, I said, Jason, are you ready for the fall party? And he said, what am I going to have to bring now? I said, oh, you know, there's going to be food. But I said, everybody in the library goes out in their yard and they collect a bunch of leaves and put them in a big old trash bag. And then we bring them in because back in those days, we decorated for our parties. Not only food, but we would decorate. If it's Halloween, you know, we'd have the whole Halloween theme. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people, there were certain ones that were really good at decorating. If it was Christmas, same thing, whatever. And so I said, around fall, we have a fall party. And we take these leaves and we strew them up and down the hall and throughout the whole library and in rooms, you know. So I said, make sure you get your leaves. So sure enough, before we left that evening, he was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to see if I can find enough leaves. I didn't let him bring them in. I just laughed and laughed. I said, I got you. But he was fully intending on bringing a big bag of leaves in and strewing them throughout the library. Should have let him.
See how long it took him to realize.
Yeah. And how many people would be like, who strung these leaves everywhere? Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Do you miss how it was back then compared to now?
I do, and I miss the people. We still have good people, and it's just that we have, in some ways, we have more to do, and folks are more to themselves, and that's not just because there's less people and more to do. Over the years, there's been a lot of breakdown of how can I say this nicely, of relationships among people, and I think a lot of jealousy and bitterness, you know, and so a lot of too much gossip. I'm guilty. So I think, you know, a lot of distrust, but there are still really good people in here that I really enjoy talking to. But yeah, it's certainly not like it used to be, and yeah, I do miss it. And I miss a lot of them that no longer work here. And we've got some that's getting ready to retire, and I know it's going to be sad. Yeah.
Do you have any other moments or memories that you want to talk about?
I left in 1999. I got married, and we had a house in Columbus, Ohio, so that would have been quite a commute. And so I worked from October 91 to May of 99, and then I came back in July of 2001. Things had already changed somewhat, even in a year and a half, 2 years. I came back as temporary for a short time, and then was in interlibrary loan for a few years. And in that short amount of time, there were new people, and it sort of, I could see a little bit of change, and it's just continued to change. Not always worse, not always. Some things are better, but what we have now with the academic advising and the tutoring people, yes, they took up a big part of our library space, but it's interesting to me to get to know them, and a lot of times students come in, they bring in more students than we've had, in my opinion, for the last few years. It's interesting to get to know a whole different group of folks, past their department, or they pass us in the way, and so yeah, that's kind of nice in my opinion. I'm not saying I would have ever chosen to have give up any part of the library, but yeah, it's just all about change, and I guess that's pretty much the way it is in any career or any university, anywhere.
Have any final comments or thoughts you want to talk about?
No, I think I could talk and talk. Everybody knows me, knows that, but I think I probably said enough.
If you want to mention anything more, you are go ahead. You do not have to stop yourself.
I have a lot of memories, but some of them I probably better not say. I don't want to incriminate anyone. So, yeah, I think it's often been said, I started out kind of as a baby and sort of grew up here. I've been here 31 years, and different ones will say, Sherry, are you thinking about retiring? I am thinking about it, but I have 2 kids, and my daughter may or may not go here. And if she does go here, I want to stay long enough because I think it will be less expensive for her. And then I'll be here, you know. And I still like my job. After everything, I still like it here. I actually still like coming in here. I love the library. I will say I walk in the library a lot. When we're closed, it's good to have a key because I come in here and I walk the stacks a lot. Didn't always do that. That is one thing that's changed. Would never have done that 10 years ago, come in here and walk when we're closed. No.
What changed as you walk around here?
Well, I needed to lose weight, and that's kind of a long story. But I did it for insurance purposes and not willingly at first. But the reason I walk in the library as opposed to other places, during the winter, it's cold. It's too cold to walk outside. We have a rec center here on campus, and I have used that, but I'm older, so I feel more comfortable with books than these young, fit college students, you know. I don't play basketball, I just walk. And I wear dresses all the time, too. So in the wellness center, I'm telling you, you don't see too many dresses in there. So the stacks, it's nice and quiet. I know my way around, I would hope, after 31 years. I know this library, and it's kind of like home, and I will say that there have been many times through the years I'll come here and put my house key in, go put my house key in instead of my, no, I'm not home, and go home and go put my library key in. So it really is kind of like home here. And so I will leave someday, but I'm not ready yet.
Anything else, Sherry?
I think that's good. I'm good.